Hey everyone, in this video I'll be showing you how to set up your Konica Minolta copier to print from your computer. The steps in this tutorial are pretty much the same for all Konica Minolta models. The only difference would be the specific drivers. You want to get the drivers that go specifically with your model. So let's get started. Before we begin, you definitely need to gather a few pieces of information. I went ahead and made a list of what you need. First off, you need to know the IP address of your copier. If you don't know that, you have to walk up to your copier and find it under the network settings tab. If you're not sure where that's at, consult your Konica Minolta dealer, your local dealer, or the dealer you purchase it from, and they can help you out. Next thing is you want to get the print drivers for your specific model, and I'll go ahead and show you how to do that. So let's get started. First off, for this tutorial, I'm going to be using a Konica Minolta Bizhub 368, which is a black and white machine, but it doesn't matter, again, what model you have. So we're going to have to download the drivers. So what I'm going to do, the easiest way that I like to do it is I just type in Bizhub and the model of the machine, which in this case I'm using a 368. I put 368 drivers and I select here, and it usually gives you a list of different sources. Make sure you go to the actual Konica Minolta site, and it says US. Sometimes you might see an EU, which is a European version. You don't want that. Here's one that's US and EN. I guess it'll work. I've never tried that, but I know that this won't work because this one's US. This is the first one that showed up, so I'm going to click on that. So most of the time it takes you to the exact model. So what you do is you scroll down and you go to drivers. So it should, most of the time it picks the right model and it gives you the model number here. But if it doesn't, like this, like it didn't for me just now, just type it in again. Just type in BizHub 368, and here's the two choices. I'm using a non-E. The E is the newer version. I'm using the older one, so I'm going to click on this one. I'm going to wait for that to load. Sometimes it takes longer, depending on the time of day and how many people are on the Konica website. So, okay, next thing I'm going to do is click on drivers. And now, as soon as this loads, you should see a list of all different operating systems from Macs to Windows. So I know I'm using a Windows 10 computer. I'm not exactly sure if mine's 32 or 64. So the way I could retrieve that is very simple. Just here in the bottom where it says type here to search, just type in system, click on system information, and here it should give you a list of your system, all the different, it's an itemized list of the breakdown of your system. So I'm going to search, I know it's Windows 10 as you can see here. I'm going to look for system type, which is 64-bit. So now I know I'm using a 64-bit. So I'm going to close this. So I'm going to select this right here, Windows 10 64-bit. And I'm going to click on the first one, PCO. PCO is the most common driver that I recommend using that. You have the option of going PostScript, where if you can see here, the first option gives you the PostScript PCO on your fax. So just this is the way to go. You're going to see a whole bunch of them. If you're wondering why there's so many, these are just older ones. As you can see here, the dates of when they released them. So I always like to get the latest one, which is March 4th is the latest one. You don't have to worry about the updated ones down the line. I mean, maybe in a year or so, or if you want to update your drivers, I recommend doing that just to make things run more smoothly, I should say. But okay, so I'm going to go ahead and click on that, and let's come back to when this is done. Uh, when this is done downloading, we'll go ahead and continue. So I'll see you in a few minutes. Okay, so my drivers are down. They're just completed downloading. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Show Folder. You could also find that on your download folder. So as you can see here, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click on the actual drivers here, and I'm going to put cut. And I want to move it to my desktop. Reason for that is it's so much easier to find. So Here is my desktop. I'm going to go ahead and create a new folder. I'm going to call it KM, Konica Minolta drivers. And I'm going to paste the drivers I downloaded here. The reason I'm doing this is because we need to extract it, and I want to extract it on the folder I just created. So I'm going to use 7-zip to extract it. I'm going to extract here. So much easier to find when I go to install the drivers. It'll be on the desktop rather than searching through your downloads and so forth. So I like to keep it nice and clean. So okay, I'm going to go ahead and close this. Next thing we're going to do is go to our control panel, our printer section. So an easy way to do that is just put your cursor here and type in CON. You can put the whole word if you want, but usually CON pops up the control panel here. But if it doesn't, just type the whole word out and you'll eventually get there. So control panel. Now I'm going to select view devices and printers. I'm going to click on that and I'm going to add a printer. So a lot of times it tries to find it for you, and then sometimes it'll find it, sometimes it doesn't. I skip this step. I usually like to pick my own driver, so I'm not going to let the machine automatically install it for me. So I'm going to click where it says the printers that I want isn't listed. So I'm going to click on that. And now I'm going to click the last option here where it says add a local printer to your network. And I'm going to hit next. Now, remember how I told you we need to know the IP address of your copier? Well, this is where you're going to use it. So I know the IP of my copier, so I'm going to put a check mark here where it says create a new port. I'm going to click on the down arrow and I'm going to select standard TCP IP. The best way to install it. It's solid. It's in my opinion, it's the best way to install a printer. So I'm going to select standard TCP IP. I'm going to hit next. On the first box which says host or IP address, that is the IP address of your copier, which the IP address of my copier is, there you go, and it automatically puts it on the bottom, okay? Make sure there's not a check mark here, otherwise it's going to automatically select whatever driver Windows feels it should install, and sometimes, most of the time, it installs the wrong one. So I'm going to uncheck that because we're going to install the drivers we downloaded. So you're going to hit next. And here's where we search for the drivers. Okay, so now it wants to install the print driver. So I'm going to put have disk, meaning we have the disk for it. And I'm going to search, I'm going to browse for my drivers, which it's on my desktop. See how easy it is to find? Now I'm going to look for KM drivers, which is a folder I just created. I'm going to click on that. And then remember, you have to extract it, otherwise you're not going to find a folder here. So you're going to click on drivers, then you're going to click on drivers again. And here's your three sets of different drivers, one for your fax, one for your PCL, and your PostScript. You can install them all if you like. It's up to you. I usually just go with a PCL, but if you have some operating systems, I'm sorry, some software programs that require you to use PostScript, you may want to install that as well. But most everyday printing uh, should work fine with just PCL. So I'm going to select PCL. I'm going to select English and Windows 64. And lastly, I'm going to select the drivers. So I'm going to hit OK. And now it gives you a list of different models the drivers will work with. I usually like to pick the model that I'm using. That way the name will be there. So I hit next. And it says use a driver that currently installed, recommended. Yep, that's the one that we installed. And here you can put whatever, and if you want to rename your copy, if you want to just take the word Konica Minolta, whatever, you could just call it after your name or front office, whatever. I usually leave it just the way it is, but you can call it anything you want. So you hit next, and now it's installing the printer. Okay, so usually defaults to do not share this printer. I like leaving it here because if you share it, that means your computer always has to be on in order for the other computers to print from it. So if your computer's off and somebody needed to print something from a computer in the front office, for example, they won't be able to print because they're dependent on yours. So I like to do a fresh install on every computer. That way they don't have to depend on anyone else. So I'm going to leave it at do not share the printer. Hit next, and you can do a test print. I sometimes like to do a test print. I'm not going to do it now because I'm positive it's going to work. And right here, it also asks you if you want to default to printer, which means that anytime you select a print, it's always going to print to this. I like leaving that on unless you have a default printer of your choice. So when you're done, you just hit finish. So good luck, and hopefully this video helped you out. Thanks.